If you're a bivocational pastor, then this special flash episode is just for you. I'm Pete Mitchell, and in between our regular Church Planter podcast episodes, I'll be bringing you insight and ideas to help our bivo pastors have an easier and more profitable go at it. If you'd like more info on the training program specifically for bivocational pastors, you can check it out at missionbybusiness.com. Hey, and an interesting thing happened at church today. So I go to a small little church plant, as you might expect, being the co-host of the Church Planter podcast and publisher of Church Planter magazine. And recently we had a new pastor come on board for worship. A great worship leader, really good, young guy. I mean, I know he's still in college. And interestingly enough, when he did his little, talk, his introduction, here's who I am, that kind of a thing, he was saying, hey, I go over here to Biola University, which is my alma mater. And, I'm hoping once I'm out of college that I can get into full-time ministry. And it was funny because the second I heard that, I immediately thought to myself, well, not if I can help it. And I know that sounds funny, especially to people in ministry. If you've been listening to the Church Planter podcast, reading Church Planter magazine for any length of time, Peyton Jones and I have been doing both of those for, I think, almost 7 years or coming up on 7 years. The reason why I'm not a huge proponent, I have no problem if someone's been called to full-time ministry. I think that's fantastic. God definitely calls people to full-time ministry. But what I've noticed is that if you really want to have an impact in your community, you got to get out into the community. See, it's really safe in our churches. It's really safe to be known as the pastor, right? And that's your church. And if anybody wants to hear about God, if anybody wants to hear about Jesus, well, they know where you're going to be. That's a very safe position to be in. So I get the allure of it. I get how we get enticed by it. And I think a lot of people end up in full-time ministry because they feel called, right? I mean, that's the whole reason why you got into ministry is you felt called to be in ministry. And if the opportunity for full-time ministry comes along, I mean, most people jump at that. Peyton has shared so many times on the podcast how he went to Wales as a missionary, him and his wife, and no one got saved until 9/11 hit, his funding dried up, and when his funding dried up, he had to go get a job. And that was when the first person got saved. It was right there on the floor talking with a coworker. In fact, I think they put together TVs. I think that was the job. It was like assembly or something like that. And he's like, I'm putting together these devil boxes, right? The TV. And yet, that's when people started to get saved. Now, why was that, right? They could have gone to Peyton's church, right? They could have gone and heard him, but he was there. He was doing life, right? The missional movement is so in love with the phrase doing life together. And yet, if we're in ministry, doing life together is a lot more than just showing up on Sunday. It's literally doing life together. What could be doing life together more than actually working with people? Spending 40 plus hours a week with them, getting to know your clients, getting to know your coworkers, getting to just be around the community. There's probably nothing that gets you out into the world more than your work. And the reason why I bring this up is I think there is just too much of an allure, of a draw, I want to be in full-time ministry. And again, if God's called you to that, I'm cool with that. I have no problem with that. I just think people are really missing the real opportunity that's right there in front of them, which is to be able to meet, hang out, get to know, do life together with people who aren't saved, and we have something different in common with them. One of the reasons why I do competitive shooting is because it puts me in a different environment. I'm around people who I wouldn't normally be around. Now, granted, I absolutely love shooting, right? I mean, that's a big deal for me. If you guys listen to podcasts, you know that about me. But I also see it as part of what my ministry is. My ministry is to reach out to these guys and gals in a way that no one else is going to do it. So I'm just bringing all this up to encourage you. If you're bivocational, man, I think you have the opportunity to do more as a bivocational minister, even if you don't have a church anymore, right? We're all called to spread the gospel, and doing it there in the workplace, you'll have one of the biggest impacts you will anywhere at any time. So I just want to encourage you along that. And by the way, of course, if you're at all interested in the type of stuff that I do and the pastors that I work with, now I got a special program. I train pastors on how to be what is called a business growth consultant. That's what I do. That's how I know how to make a living. And so I've taken a bunch of pastors through the program. These guys, it's been a life-changing experience for them. If that's something you'd be interested in, it's certainly not for everyone. I set up a free training. It's at missionbybusiness.com. You can go check it out. If after you go through the training, you're like, hey, I want to know more about this, then you're going to be able to set up a call with me. You and I will get on the phone and we'll talk. It's not a just join program. I don't want just anybody in it. I want to make sure that it's going to be a right fit for you because, one, it's a big excuse me, man. I got a frog in my throat there. It's a big commitment on your part. It's a big commitment on my part. And so I want to make sure that it's going to be a good fit. So if you want to check it out, check out missionbybusiness.com. If I encourage you is to realize that isn't a failing, it isn't a shortcoming to not be in full-time ministry. I think God uses that more than he does full-time ministry. Because look at most of the world. Most of the world does not have full-time ministers by any stretch of the imagination. Does that mean God doesn't love the rest of the world? Because he's not giving them full-time ministers? No, of course not. He loves them so much, he's giving them bivocational ministers. All right, guys. Talk to you later.